What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Cornerstone Worship Podcast. My name is Jithin, and of course, joining us is our co-host, Thalia. Thank you so much for stopping by. This is the final episode of Season 1, titled Goat Talk, where we're talking to someone who's a worship leader or a musician in the worship space that we feel has made such an impact in the space, not only in New York, but also around the world. And so today we have a member of the Grammy Award-winning, Stellar Award-winning, I don't know how many awards y'all won, but Maryanne Joshua George.
There you go.
Let me not mess that up. Thank you so much for coming on the pod.
Yeah, it's so good to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
So, well, let's get right into it. Maryanne, as you know, has myself and Thalia, we've grown up on Long Island, and you've also had the similarity to growing up on Long Island. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself, how you got into music, and then eventually you got into worship?
Yeah, so I grew up in Queens, New York Park area. My family is very musically oriented, and so my parents were both worship leaders. My aunts and uncles were worship leaders. So I kind of always grew up around music, some way, shape, or form, mostly church music. Grew up in church too. And so I grew up listening to them sing, and then every get-together, birthdays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, every holiday, there was always an excuse to get together, and so there was always a reason for us to sing and worship and stuff. And so I kind of grew up in that kind of environment and learned instruments at a young age too. I learned how to play violin. I was classically trained in violin when I was 3 onward, and I still play, which is nice. And then I trained myself to play guitar and piano by ear. And so I've always had an affinity for music. So even when I would go to, I eventually went to, I never pursued music professionally until much later in life, but I went to school and everything, but music had still played a big role in, just who I am. And so I feel like I was known in my communities and my circles for doing worship and still playing and singing and doing all the things. So yeah, it's a big part of who I am.
That. And you did, when you went to school, what did you end up going to school for?
Yeah, so I got my bachelor's in psych, and then I did my master's of education in clinical mental health counseling.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So that's totally different end of
very, very different.
Yeah. Affected
but same. It's same but
psychology.
Different. It's very much it's funny, I feel a lot of the things I do now, I'm actually utilizing a lot of the skills from a master's program.
Mm-hmm.
But I find them to be different but same in a lot of ways. Clinical mental health counseling is just you're dealing with a lot of things that people are going through in their process and their journey. And oftentimes when you're writing a song, those things come out too. And so just holding space for those feelings and those emotions and just asking the right questions, and in both careers, in both professions, you're kind of doing the same thing.
And now you're leading worship too.
Yeah.
I feel that communication, you're kind of I can gauge how to approach.
Well, more so I do lead worship and that, but the career part of me for me is the songwriting. And so when we're writing songs for the global church, it's what are people going through? What do we want to put language to what we feel God wants them to know about themselves or their situations? And so just asking those questions to them and just being what are you going through right now? What would you like to hear from the Lord, or what would the Lord like to say to you? And that's kind of where I feel this marriage between writing and counseling almost comes in together, because when we get into the room, we realize, or when we get into songwriting rooms and we're writing, we're representing the church in our own individual ways. And so I do feel I see a lot more of those skills coming out, in my job now, the mental health counseling skills coming into the song things and worship circles and stuff. Yeah,
sounds like a whole other episode of psychology. Of
yes, the psychology. That's right.
That's really cool. And so, along with that, after your time in college, you also had 2 big major life milestones. You got married, and then you also have a daughter, Mariah.
Yeah.
And so, how is that? We could touch on it briefly. Just how are those things, those 2 big life milestones, have maybe changed your perception on worship or,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, yeah, I think it's like, it's interesting when you go through different like milestones in life in general. I always find myself learning another side or another face of who God is. And so through both of those experiences, I feel like I've learned more about the goodness of Jesus and just who he's been to me. But I've also learned a lot more about myself and like what I respond well to, what I don't respond well to, a lot about how strong I really am. Because like a lot of times I like would approach the Lord being like, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. And then I feel like the Lord gives me the strength to go through one milestone. And it's like reminding myself, like, hey, I got through this. So, I can get through it. It's like sometimes, scripture says you gotta stir yourself up. And a lot of times I feel like during those milestones, one by one, I've learned how to like encourage myself and stir myself up to face whatever it is that God's prepared for me next, So definitely feel like I've seen more of the Lord. Like I've seen more of the Lord in every season that comes and every milestone that passes. So
I feel like milestones can be a reminder of who God is and what he has done. So that's like so valid.
Yeah. Because sometimes like when you're stuck in a situation, you forget, right, what God has pulled you out of or even how he's blessed you.
Yeah.
And so
it's like a reminder of his faithfulness.
Yeah, for sure. And so now transitioning into Maverick, why don't you tell us a little bit? I know you moved from New York to St. Louis. Did that play a factor in?
No,
or was it just something totally different?
It was so random and very different, but very it's a very long story to be honest. But it's truly the hand of God because I was not seeking out to be a part of anything, and I was literally just. I was in St. Louis. I was kind of doing covers. I'd always been doing covers since I was a kid, younger. I had a really embarrassing covers on YouTube. Because I was like, nope, you just can't be seeing this. Literally private. But yeah, I have a bunch of. I was doing those since I was a kid, and so when I went back to St. Louis, we had the pandemic hit in 2020. That was a big time where I was kind of back in my room, and just kind of singing and leading worship, and that's when Mav started to really take off, and we were not realizing the impact until after the pandemic, truthfully. Mm-hmm. So we would go to these things, record some songs, write some songs together, come back home, I'd be singing them, worshiping to them, and it would become this thing. But I was found before the pandemic, I was still doing covers, and the founder of Mav City, well, there was no Mav City at the time, but he DM'd me and was like, hey, do you write songs? And I was like, no, I don't. Not really. At least I don't consider myself a songwriter. I have really bad songs. And he was just like, I think you'd be good at this. I'd love to invite you to camp and write. And I'd never been to a writing camp. I'd never co-written before. So he gave me this opportunity to come to Atlanta, and we went there. And that's just really history. That was the first official Mav camp. There were unofficial ones that weren't titled anything. And then they named themselves Mav City at that camp. And yeah, ever since then, it's kind of just been taken off.
Wow. Is there one particular project that you felt really encouraged you as a leader or as a songwriter?
Ooh. That's hard. Okay. They're all.
You can say your own too, because.
Or yeah.
Well, yeah. My album is more of I just felt it was really ready to go, ready to put out. It was a culmination of 10 years of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just my offering to the world. But I do feel Old Church Basement was the one album I'm not really on, but it was so the recording was one of the wildest experiences ever. It's just the tangible presence of God was in the room, and the writing was so storytelling, but it felt like worship. It was so it felt like this devotional album, but it was the language I had never heard. I had never heard that kind of language before, and it was just really sweet. It was such a sweet time. It was a holy 2 days of recording. Yeah, that was a really beautiful one. But I would say the second one was a Juneteenth recording. Just being able to to worship alongside my like Black brothers and sisters and just join them in that, in celebrating who they were and their freedom, and also for me, also I was pregnant during that recording, and so I felt like I had a really beautiful encounter with the Lord during the song I led, which was Mighty One, and I really, really felt like this extra. I don't know if it was because I was pregnant or something, but I felt like an extra layer of grace to sing something. Yeah, or an extra layer of like, I had something to say. Yeah. And I felt like I had to release it. And I felt that. And that was like the first time I felt that in a really, really long time. And so that was a really impactful one for me too. But they're all really special in their own way. It's hard for me to pick one. That's a really hard
one. I do have to say on that, like hearing and understanding the process of what you guys are going through, I didn't realize that even if you weren't singing on the track, you were still songwriting in the background. You were still involved in the songs.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize like that.
Yeah, there was actually we were all in the room, like, we're like listening to some of these songs for the first time too. And that week we had also written a bunch of songs, but they were not for that specific recording. We used some of them. Like actually, one of the songs that I helped write was called "Sufficient for Today." That was ended up on the Juneteenth album. Okay. Was it the Juneteenth? No, the Brave EP, which was actually written that same week we were at Elevation to record that.
Oh wow!
So it was like, we were writing that week. Yeah. It's like random. They're all like we wrote them at different times, or we performed them, or like sang them at things. So, but yeah, we're kind of all like writing all the time, or thinking all the time of what to write about. So.
Mm-hmm. And so, being with Maverick, I know we've been on several tours. But you also lead worship at a local church here on Long Island.
Is it in or on?
We'll leave that in the comments. You guys can debate about that. But can you tell us, have you, during your experiences on tour, what have you learned and then have been able to take back to your local church as you've been leading, or have been able to share with your team as far as teaching them to lead as well?
Yeah. Wow. That's a really great question. Yes, I've done 3 legs of a tour now. 1, 2, 3, yeah. And I will say that it's crazy because you can go to like different cities and you'll go to these like big arenas and stuff, and like you can tangibly feel like the difference between cities, and it's really crazy. Like you can feel expectation in like one city, but you can feel darkness in another, where it's like much harder to like communicate or worship or like push through. And so it's been crazy to sense but then there's heartbeats. I feel like each city has a heartbeat. And you can like feel the heartbeats of cities when you go on stage and like experience it. And there's performing, and there's like the sheer adrenaline of that, and the energy of that. But then add the layer of like spiritual things, and it's like you can sense like demonic stuff. You can sense like the presence of God in a really powerful way too. Like, and this happens like even when we like are in, like I remember going to where did we go? New Orleans, and it was like it just feels dark. Like, it's just, to me, I'm like, this place feels dark. Like, it's just, no shade to Nolan. No. It's not about it, but it's
a history.
Still
good.
Yeah, it's a history. It's a history, exactly. It's like and those things come into play when you do something like what we do. Like, and we bring the host of heaven, like, into these arenas. It's a really big deal, like in the spirit world, when you have to prepare yourself. Yeah, you gotta prepare yourself, and man, like spiritual warfare has been really real. Like when we go on those tours, and we try our best to we had pastors on tour with our last our Kingdom tour. We had pastors with us, and we were really trying our best, and it was really, really hard. There were some nights where it was just like, man, I don't know if we have it in us, and somehow God gives us the grace and the strength to push through. But it's just like, and it's funny because I think back to those times when I was at church, like waking up at 6 a.m. being like, I really don't want to do this today. I'm sorry. And then you get, like, you realize how much those things prepared me, at least for me. It was like preparing me for these things, which obviously I don't feel like this is the end all be all, right? But like, it's just crazy to see like how God kind of used those moments in serving my local church to serving, you know, a bigger body of people. I truthfully don't feel like there's I mean, in my heart, I don't feel like there's a difference. There's an obvious difference, right? But in my heart, it's like I still sense the same things when I'm in the presence of my local church. You know, I still feel the same things. I feel the presence of God. It's the same presence of God that I feel in the room when I go to an arena. Yeah. And it's just really cool to see how the Lord shows up no matter how many people are there. Yeah. It's really, really beautiful because He does show up, and it's been sweet to see those moments and experience it. Yeah.
You talk about like preparing yourself for these either like local services or these arena services. Like, how do you go about preparing yourself spiritually for, you know, what you're about to encounter with these, you know, whether it is that darkness or the heavy presence of God? Like, what is that process?
You know, I've been asked this question quite a bit, and I don't want to cheapen, you know, what the experience is. But I really feel like if we're having just a consistent relationship with the Lord, like we are praying up, like there's no real formula. You know what I'm saying? Like, because there's like, I mean, obviously we want to get ourselves in the mindset, and like tour is so fun and it's like busy, right? You can easily lose focus. It's just like anybody preparing for a basketball game, like or like you're preparing for something. You're gonna like want to be focused on what you're doing. So like practically, like I would get into my room this last tour run. I actually had my own dressing room, which was sweet, and I had brought a little Bluetooth speaker with me, so I was like, I had a playlist that I would be playing, like a tour playlist, just worship songs, to just kind of mentally get myself in that space, because there's so much going on when you're on a tour, or even doing a show. Like there's just so much happening, so many things being told to you. You just want to mentally be in a place to not get frustrated or like on edge.
Like closing the doors.
Just kind of like, and so I think practically that was a way, but like I feel like I could have obviously done a way better job of just being more intentional about spending time with the Lord. Because, you know, when you're living at home, there's that consistency. Like you wake up at a certain time, but it's like when you're on a bus, there's like no room for yourself. Like, you know, it's just like, it's much harder, but it's so much more necessary. So it's like, it's really a struggle. And I'm not like a pro tour person or anything. I'm learning as I go. Like and every tour that I've done, like every next tour, I'm always better than the last one. The first time I feel like it was really hard. It was really tough to just kind of navigate some of that. And there were some nights where I really went up there and I was just like, I'm just going to push through this entire thing because I don't know what else to do. These poor people came here to see us, but hopefully they're seeing the Lord because we're doing nothing today. But yeah, like I feel like I'm just genuinely, I really am trying to be more intentional, be like, even if it means I just spent 15 minutes just acknowledging Him and just asking what's on His mind, like, and just kind of like normalizing this friendship.
Yes. Yeah.
The friendship with, friendship with Jesus. Like, I think when we get to that place, it's like so much easier to talk about it and to sing about it. Like, we don't have to like prepare. You know, we know what to say. Yeah, you know, we know what He would want to say. And so I definitely feel like the next tour I go on, I'm like going to be way more intentional about that, because it was harder for me the last couple of tours to keep that intentional effort to maintain friendship. But it was easier though this last tour than the tour before that and the tour before that. So it's getting better, and God's giving me grace, thank God.
And even for like young worship leaders that are you know, maybe not going on tour, but they're leading week in, week out. It's an encouragement to them too. Like, you know, your first worship service, you know, leading might not be the best.
Yeah, that's okay.
You might miss a note. You might.
We're not really even doing it for them, right? Like it's really like, this is really for the Lord. And so at the end of the day, like we've made mistakes on tour. We've sang wrong notes. I've been flat. Like it's just, it is what it is, and we don't think too much about it because we're just like, this is for the Lord. It's a gift to Him. But yeah, like even for local worship leaders, it's like, how often are we inviting the Lord into our day-to-day life? Like even that act alone, like we're thinking on Him day after day. When it comes to Sunday, we've thought about Him all week, and we know Him. We know what He would say, what He would want to do. He will give us. I feel like when we seek the Lord and we pursue His heart and we seek first the kingdom, all will be added. So it's like we know He gives us what to say. He gives us what to say to our congregations, you know. And for me, with songwriting, like He would give me what to say. Like, and so I feel very like encouraged when I always notice when I take efforts to like invite Him into my day-to-day life. Like I notice that He's like, thanks for inviting me. Here's what I have to say. Like, you know,
That's awesome.
He's not gonna force Himself on people.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's the beauty of God. Like He just kind of like lets you get there, and then when you come there, He's like, I'm waiting for you. You know, but
That's cool.
sweet.
Oh, when you're back at home, leading worship at your church, I know, you know, obviously a big part of it is it's like what you're talking about, the discernment, and also taking time to spend, being intentional, spending with God during the week. But maybe in the sense of building your set list, like what are you typically looking for? Are you deeming it with a pastor that's preaching, or are you just going based on, you know, what's going on in the environment of the church? What is your typical like process as far as picking songs?
So I'm not really directing in my church anymore, but just because I'm not there usually every Sunday, but I do lead. I lead like songs. But one thing when I was directing, because I used to do this, one of the things I feel really convicted about now is just like, what are we actually singing in our worship sets? Like, who are they directed to? Are they like directed to us or directed to the Lord? And being really intentional, like, and I've kind of put my foot down in the recent months that I've been back, well, the last year that I've been back, you know, when people give me certain songs to lead, I'm like, I don't want to be a diva or anything, but I'm just like, if we're calling this worship, like, I'm not comfortable singing a song that has nothing to do with God. Like, and more about encouragement and submission and surrender, which I think, you know, those songs are important to sing, but I don't always think I don't believe that those are worship songs, like congregational worship songs. And so I'm like always going to be the person that loves Agnus Dei, or like I'm going to love like anything that's just straight up vertical is like, I always say you can never ever go wrong, and you can palpably feel the shift in a room when you sing a song about like us and then like shift to the song about the Lord, just straight vertical. There's like a clear, it could even be a brand new song and it'll always hit. Like, because it actually speaks for us. Like it's also what heaven is saying at the exact same time. So it's like when we're doing that, we're collaborating with heaven. There's like something really supernatural that's happening. And so I'm like, when I came to that revelation, I was like, what the heck have we been singing on Sunday mornings? Like we've been like short-changing ourselves, like, you know, like, and so I would encourage worship leaders, like, even if that means you sing the same 3 songs every Sunday, I promise you it will be different every single time. Because there's power in those words, and we're not just singing alone. We're not singing those things alone. When you sing songs that are like encouraging to us, which is important, like obviously those are devotional songs in my opinion. Like those are songs we sing by ourselves to encourage and stir up our spirits, and like and those songs lead to vertical worship, right? It leads to exalting who Jesus is. But like I encourage y'all to like really focus, like when you write your sets, focus on just songs that are like, I love What a Beautiful Name. Like that to me is like going down as like a hymn in our generation. But it's so vertical. It just talks about the name of Jesus, like the things he's done. Like, and it's just so straightforward. It'll always hit. Like name one set where What a Beautiful Name does not hit. The limit does not exist. It will always hit. When in doubt,
no, for sure. But it's good though. I think it's also like to understand us as musicians and as singers, we can get tired of singing What a Beautiful Name. But there's also something that happens within the congregation when they hear What a Beautiful Name. They know not that they know what's coming up, but they know like, hey, this is what the song is about, and this is how I can do my situation or the battle that I'm going through personally, because I know what the song is saying, and I might have sang it 1,000 times, but this 1,001 time when I'm going through this situation, this is where God is going to really show that breakthrough in that moment.
And it's like what we forget also is like God breathes on these songs too when they're being written. So just like scripture has a different light that we read the same Bible, like read the same. It's been the same Bible. It's not like, but every time we read certain verses, it hits us different. Like it hits us different. Songs have that ability too. Like a song can mean something to you in one season and mean something totally different to you in another. And so I think it's important. Like I think we don't realize how much like these songs actually minister to people, but when we make them vertical, it's like prophetic, it's like encouraging, it's like everything all at once, and it speaks to the character and nature of who God is, and that's where all the answers to our issues lie. Like that's the answer to every problem we could ever have. It's in who He is, and so the more we're talking about how good He is, how holy He is, how powerful, worthy, like we're unbeknownst to us, our spirits are actually responding to it. Whether we know it or not, it's healing us. And so I always say lean into that, because that is doing the work, like more than we realize. We could be singing it very plainly, not even understanding. Like my daughter could sing the song, but she doesn't realize she's prophesying over herself. She's actually speaking into something way bigger than her. And so it's like, that's always going to be the song I want her to sing. Like, I don't want her to, meaning not that specific song, but just the song of like who God is, His character, His nature. It just opens a portal, in my opinion. And so that's like, I've been really intentional now. Like, I don't really want to sing songs for worship. Like if we're doing something before worship and it's like preparing our hearts for something, like I'll sing whatever. But like if we're calling this a congregational worship time, I'm not going to sing anything other than something that's vertical. And I've been really trying to put my foot down with that. My brother is the choir director in my church, and I'm just like, why do I follow every single song? I'm just like, he's just like, who do you think you are? Just because you're part of backstage doesn't mean you sing what you want. I'm like, I have to be like, I have to tell him actually. He doesn't know this is serious, and I have to like explain this. No. But I've been meaning to tell this to my own worship team, so.
Well, just send the link.
Maybe I will. Hey guys. Shameless plug.
So, trying to pivot actually a little bit. I know we talked about What a Beautiful Name, but I think a song that you sang that is, I will say, one of my top 5. It's such an awesome guy.
Okay, can I just say that? I was like, you got okay.
And so, could you tell us a little bit about that? Because I feel that's also such a great song, such a great song, such a great vertical song. Can you just briefly just talk about your process of writing it? What did you think about it?
I have bad news for you guys. I didn't write that.
I didn't look at the sorry.
Well, you sang it.
Thank you. But I know a little bit about. I know one of the writers of songs was actually going through a really difficult season in their life, and they wrote this song as a result of it. But this goes to what I was saying, where it's like, when we focus on just the goodness of who Jesus is and talk about that song has impacted so many people. And it's so funny because it's like, in my opinion, so sorry, it was like one of my least favorite songs.
Wow.
That I had led on that.
Interesting.
Like, not because like the words of the song are actually so powerful. It's not even a word. It's such a petty reason. It's like, I felt like it's so 90s, like the I can say that because I'm friends with all the songs. And I love them, and they're my friends. But it's so 90s to me. And I would be like, man, it's so hard to like, what other like melodic structure? Like, you can't really do anything chord-wise. But it's crazy how that song specifically has reached a certain demographic within the church. Like, certain churches that aren't as like they're just a church in the little like town, and they're speaking to their congregation, their community, and that song specifically has ministered so much to them. And it actually humbled me like to see that and be like, man, like who cares if I don't like the song? Like this song is actually doing so much more than I could have ever imagined it doing. And so, I mean, those songwriters knew what they were doing. They felt the leading to write the song and to do the exact chord structures and everything. And it's spoken to people in such a beautiful way. And I'm so grateful that God felt like I was the person to sing it. And it's humbled me. He's changed me through the process of even singing it. You know, I didn't write it, but I always feel very connected to that song just because it was my first ever introduction to the Mav, like
Was that your first
volumes.
song?
Oh.
I didn't put
So that's what I'm saying.
together.
It always holds a very special
Oh.
place in my heart. But I remember my dad saying, like, when I came home, he was like, I'm so, like, all the other songs I don't remember. Okay, I don't want to say that because I don't honestly remember, like, every song.
There's also like 1,000 Maverick songs.
No, but in that specific volume, my dad was like, this is the only song that I felt like you could sing. Like, it's your song
Oh.
to sing. And he felt like it was the most powerful song on the album, just content-wise.
Mhm.
And he was like, I'm so glad you didn't sing any other song. And this was the song that you sang on this album. And I was like,
That's dope.
cool. I didn't appreciate it. Definitely appreciate it more now.
That's how it usually is with parents, right? You don't appreciate what they say in the moment, and then a little later they're like, oh yeah, I get you.
You're kind of right.
Like, it's a reminder of like God knows what the masterpiece is.
Mhm.
Right? So
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
weaving everything. I always
Yeah.
remember this like analogy that someone did. He sees it, what he's weaving from the top, but from the bottom it just looks like a bunch of threads. And
Yeah.
then you finally get that image from above, and it's like so beautiful. So that's incredible, though. That
So
the
stunning.
impact of that.
Mhm.
Yeah. So in terms of
It's like anyone, because it's like what happened before. I was like, let's say such an okay, you're gonna say it. Okay, let's go into the next.
we do have this. That's what I don't even know how many years of friendship that we have, but that's what happens when we hang out a lot.
I'm like, okay.
Finish each other's.
Send. I was like paragraphs.
Going back a little bit into leading worship, a big part of like being a leader or leading a song is showing like the vulnerability of you as self as a leader, singing the song. And so, I guess for the question to you is, do you feel it's necessary to be vulnerable and transparent while you're leading worship? And if so, how have you incorporated that during your worship sets?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons Mav got so big was because we were just not afraid to tell the truth, like about the human condition. And I'm not saying that, they're speaking into faith and speaking they're speaking in faith about where you want to be in life and where I want to be this, and that's all important, but you can't really get to any place of change unless you really accept where you are. And the Lord doesn't meet us where he thinks we should be, right? He meets us where we are, and it's like, come as you are is literally what the scripture says. And so it's like, I don't think you can actually get to a place of doing anything or changing unless you accept like where you are. And so I'm never afraid to share like the nitty-gritties of my story. That's a very scary thing to say because I don't know what else is coming. But I mean, I've always felt like, you know what? If my life is really for the glory of God, that means every mistake I make, every failure, every shortcoming, I have to trust and believe that God's glory is going to be seen through it. And so if I hold everything in my life with an open hand, then, there's nothing really to be afraid of. I can be vulnerable. And I think vulnerability is a superpower. I think it leads to healing and truth. Mm-hmm. And so I always encourage worship leaders, like, be yourself. Like, just be yourself, your flaws and all. Like, it's crazy, like, how many... I mean, we look at David. He's one of the examples to me of, like, one of the greatest songwriters of all time. He was so himself, like half of the songs... I say Sam's, and I corrected myself to say songs here. But I'm a Sam's girl. He, like, literally every Sam's like, why are you forsaking me, God? Like, oh my God, why do you hate me? Like, I literally feel like I'm gonna die. Like, this is the modern translation.
I was like, I hear that.
I literally feel like I'm gonna die today, Lord. I'm falling into a pit and I'm never gonna get up. This is the worst day of my life.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, literally every Sam. And, like, David was just real about where he was, and God called him a man after his own heart. Like, and I mean, he obviously did a whole bunch of other things. And, like, he suffered the consequences of those things, but, like, God still called him a man after his own heart. Like, I think a lot, especially growing up in my culture, Jithin and I grew up in the same culture, and it's like we're so used to, like, covering everything up and just, like, kind of putting a rug on everything. But it's, like, getting into the muck and the mire of our situation and just realizing that, okay, like, this is probably not traditional, it's probably not what everybody wants from me, but I'm going to be real about this and trust that God's doing something. And I'm saying this to you now, but it's like even with my family and my, my friends and my communities, it's like, it's still a fight. Like, it's still a fight to be vulnerable and real, about where I'm at. I'm not perfect. I'm not going to get it 100% just because I have a platform or like I'm on stages and arenas. And like, yeah, there's a higher standard, but it doesn't mean that I don't fall.
Yeah.
And I don't fail. Like I mess up. And but I also trust that the God who's brought me here is going to sustain me and keep me. And I feel like the worst thing you could do is shut him out of it. And so what I always try to do is like, even when I'm struggling, it's like, okay, like inviting the Lord into that. And I think as worship leaders, that's like, I want my life to be, I'm not saying my life's going to be perfect, but I want my life to represent one where I can literally say God is like my friend. Like we cut up like friends, we fight like friends, we make up like friends, like we are friends. I've invited him into every situation and I've asked him to come. Yeah. So that's what I encourage leaders to do now. Like I'm just like, be real. Just don't come like you think he wants you to come, because you're gonna just spend a lot of anxiety there. Like just be yourself and say it as it is. He's not afraid.
And growing up like with your intercultural, I mean, it's kind of goes like, do you find that was particularly hard to come to that place of vulnerability, or is there like a big tug of war at your point?
It's really hard. Like I feel like it's harder now for me. Like I think it's really hard now for me, and then add the layers of like those milestones we hit in life, or we have children now. It's like now it's like there's an expectation of how you should mother or parent, and it's like, okay, like I don't really feel like I was this mom. I don't feel like I was a girl who grew up with this one feeling of like, I want to be a mother. Like, no, I didn't grow up like that. So it's like, how do I parent in a way that like I feel like is true to me, but also honors my child and honors the Lord, So it's like things like that where it's like, it's not traditional. I don't think like most Malayali parents would probably be like, you shouldn't be going on tours. Like you have a child, you have a daughter, like, and just being like, no, I feel like God's called me to do this thing and do it, and it may not be what you agree with, but I feel led to do it, and thankfully my family's been supportive. But it's always a little bit of a struggle at first. It's a fight for me sometimes to remind myself I'm doing the right thing, because it can feel like the wrong thing a lot of the time. So
well, it's incredible that you're still like no, this is my call. I'm gonna follow it. That's really inspiring.
Yeah. So wrap up, we only have a couple more questions, but how do you stay grounded or maintain a sense of humility? I think it's kind of easy for you because I feel like even just following you on TikTok and Instagram, you're very yourself.
No, we haven't publicly announced the TikTok. Oh. I'm just kidding. No, it's just like I never post the TikToks on Instagram, so I just think I'm in my little long corner of TikTok that nobody sees. But no, it's there. It's real. I just have to accept it. It's there.
But like, how do you maintain like this level of humility, but also as far as coming back and forth between Maverick and
I think something that's something that I tell myself is like, you're gonna be a lifelong student. Like there's always something to learn.
Yeah.
Like I never feel like, this is just me and my personality. It's like I never feel like I know anything. But I always feel like even with like me having this like, it's weird. I don't walk into a room being like, I have like 5 Grammys and with a Grammy award winning group. Like I don't feel that, because I really genuinely feel like I can learn things from people. Like I can learn something from you guys sitting here on this couch. There's always, if you go in and live life with the mindset, like there's always something to learn. You're never in a place where you feel like you know it all. Like there's never in a place like humility. Like with humility, you are always learning something, and you never put yourself above like anything really, because you're constantly willing to like learn something. So that means when I go to my all Malayalam service, like there's something to learn from that. And honestly, I have learned things from there. Like I've seen the dedication and devotion of like my older aunties and uncles in the churches and the services that I went to. I grew up going to like fasting and prayer meetings, like watching like, my parents like fasting for like 21 days straight, or like 40 days. My dad once did a 40-day fast. So I have to like see those things and like, now I can look at like my life and be like, yeah, okay, like what do they know about touring? Like they don't know that stuff, but they know about consistency and dedication and devotion, and I can learn things from that. And so there's always something to learn. There's something to learn from my daughter. Oh my God, she teaches me so many things. Like 18 months of age, I'm like, so smart. Like she's teaching me so much right now. So there's like, if you're constantly just tuning your mind to learn, like you can never really feel like you don't really. I mean, you never know everything, right? And so I always tell myself, I'm like, I'm gonna learn until the day I die.
Yeah, I think that's
laying on my deathbed being like.
Especially as a worship leader, I feel like as soon as you like stop learning, that's when you get yourself in trouble.
Honestly.
Yeah. There's always something you can learn. If it's not musically, then it's spiritually. Just like you said, we can read the story about Jonah, right? And we're like, oh yeah, we know Jonah because I learned about it in in children's church and stuff like that. But does anything that we do as a worship leader, we can take it and apply it in a different way and learn from it from a different angle. And then we can take that and encourage, our team and those who are around us for all of us to grow together as one unit, and to use that also to encourage the church and help the church grow in their faith too, because that's a lot of times that's what we're doing as worship leaders. We're encouraging people to increase their faith. We're singing these songs and declaring these songs about Christ and how He's a firm foundation and He never fails. Even though I might be going through something where I feel like I'm failing. But us as a worship team, we're up there on the stage and on this platform to be there and discern for these people and pray over them and be like, hey, listen, you might feel like you're failing, but we serve a God that doesn't fail. And He's there for us, whether, in a halo or a valley, He's always with us.
Yeah, incredible. Thank you, guys.
Of course. So we want to know, what do you have in the works, or what do we have to look forward to from you?
So,
big announcement.
No, there's no big announcement or anything. I'm not trying to put too much pressure on myself, obviously, but I am working on an album. I'm hoping to I don't have a date that I'm releasing on it, but I'm hoping to create a more studio album this time, not a live one. But it's not a worship album, so it'll be more of a process, just singer-songwriter vibes, but with a lot of faith elements in there. So slowly working on that, getting things together, casting vision for that. I have a bunch of songs I've already written, but I feel like there's a few more that need to be sung and said and written as well. So just slowly taking my time with it, not putting out pressure. But this year I actually want to do a few live shows, so
little solo things?
Do little solo gigs.
Okay.
In New York, so
In on Long Island.
maybe city.
Yeah.
I think I'm in the room if we move the piano. I'll have my people not get back to you.
There's something about just performing live, and I feel like I've never given it. I never really toured my album, so I'm hoping to kind of revamp some of the songs and get on the road.
That's cool. Yeah. Final question: if there's one thing that you can share with an up and coming worship leader trying to navigate this thing, life, and also leading a congregation in a local church, what's something that you would like to send off to them as an encouragement?
I would say just be honest about who you are, and don't be afraid to be vulnerable. But invite the Lord into those spaces. I think the second we try to do things on our own, we get ourselves into a bigger mess. And so I think it's just being honest about where we're at and inviting the Lord into those spaces. And the other thing I would say is I think we spend a lot of time striving to be the next worship leader, or looking even at people in Nat or people in Hillsong or people in Bethel and Elevation or whatever, as these things, right? These goals or aspirations. And some of that is healthy, I get it. I understand I have it too. I would, admire a certain thing about a certain worship leader. But I think the older I've gotten, I've realized that the Lord has placed, me in my church to do something very specific, and He trusts and made me a certain way. And He loves and delights in those things about me. He loves who I am and my personality. And so there's only one you. And so trust that the Lord loves who you are, all the quirks about you. just don't compromise on that, and trust that like as you live your life that you're growing and God's giving you that grace to do stuff. I think we wait so long to like for something to happen, and it's like, oh, just be faithful.
Yeah.
Just be faithful in the small stuff. And maybe that's not even a worship team right now. Maybe that's just like in your school, like being faithful to your Christian club or like your university. Or maybe that's in your job, like being faithful and serving your team. But those are small things, and God may never give you something bigger, and that's okay too, because we can find the sweetness in serving the Lord even in the smaller things. And honestly, when you get to the bigger things, you almost want the smaller things. And so I would really encourage people just continue to ask the Lord to open up your eyes to like what He's doing around you, and how you can partner with Him in those ways. So that's what I'm saying.
Cool. Well, Maryanne, thank you so much.
Oh, you thought I was done. I got you.
Let's go.
All right.
I was like, that's how you felt the whole time.
If you're down, I can.
Yeah, come on, let's do it.
So they don't know, but I'm gonna start this in season 2. The guest is gonna start asking questions. Hey. Okay, how long have you both been leading worship?
Ooh. Well, I've been. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say I currently don't lead worship, but I separately from you, I love worship. I started off in Spanish ministry, actually, very Pentecostal Spanish church.
Yeah.
Yes.
She could throw down.
Right, Vigilia.
No, they like Indian Pentecostal.
Yeah, no, it's so crazy.
They're crazier.
We talk about it all the time, like Spanish Pentecostals.
No, there are Spanish caritas.
Corritos.
Yes.
That are literally the same things in Malayalam.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I was talking about this with, okay, this is not gonna name. I'm not gonna name it. I'm not trying to be rude.
Yeah.
But Israel Hogan's wife, Adrian, grew up in a Pentecostal church. So she was singing these corridos.
Yes,
I was like, there is literally a Malayalam song in that exact
Hold on.
like, what?
Yeah,
That's
so-
crazy.
Yeah, it's so crazy. Just not only the songs, but even just the cultural stuff
It's
that
so
they threw.
sensitive.
Like they have very
It's
like
CPM.
yeah. So that.
You know.
And that's how we got together. We had our own individual struggles, and then we came together at the church, and we led
I
together.
love
Yeah.
that. Okay.
Basically.
But so yeah, you've led since.
I mean, it's like well, I grew up Catholic.
Okay.
And then my mom brought us to Assembly of God Church, and I was like involved, and like the second they knew I could sing, you're like, okay, come and sing with us, you know, like
Yeah, you know how it is.
you're like, all right, let's go. And so that was like 12, right?
Wow,
And there was a very small team at the time, so
Yeah.
12, and then I finally started like leading worship, I guess, like I don't know, like 14 maybe I started leading my own song, but then we have this thing called fine arts, and so
AG.
that was okay, so that's what like led me to actually like
And she wasn't just one of those kids. Are you gonna say it?
Stop. No, I'm not gonna say nothing.
She's not one of those kids that just participated. She like
Wait.
won.
No.
Oh, you won?
Yeah.
No, Spanish.
So I didn't know anything about AG. I didn't grow up AG,
Yeah.
but my husband went to an AG church, and like that was when I got married. I got like introduced to this whole world of AG.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fine arts.
But
Like, how
like-
it's like PYFA times an hour.
It's legit.
It's
It's
wild.
crazy.
I don't know what it is now, but
Yeah, I don't. Yeah,
my husband through
My
that.
husband was in JVQ, and they did all
And they
the
loved
Bible thing.
Yes.
Art. He was winning the things.
That's
too.
incredible. Well, that's how we met.
I felt like I was so cool with my first prize in PYFA Bible quiz. And then my husband, he's like, I can recite the whole book of Hebrews. And I'm like, all right.
You gotta throw that outside.
Yeah, I'm like, me feeling good about myself for the last 15 years. And now you want to come up here and say you learned the whole book of Jeremiah. Okay, great.
Thanks.
Like,
That's a lot of info.
okay.
Good for, I don't know, like we're like, wow, I'm really impressed right now.
Yeah.
But that's when we met on Fine Arts. And then,
You were in fine arts?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I also grew up AG too, so started with that. So that's why I have this interesting. So I grew up in an American AG church.
Yeah.
Then I also had all my cousins went to Malayan churches.
Yeah.
So but I always play the piano. So it's like, all right, well, we're having 40 days of fasting, and a piano player can't play all 40 days. So I started playing half of them, and then I just got into it. And I started playing at all these conferences and churches, and so I was
incredible.
double dipping for a good part of my life, and then
Yeah.
eventually we led worship at a church together, and then we separated from there, and now I'm at Bridge.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so what's the one thing that you would say you've like learned? Something that you feel like God has taught you in your seasons of worship leading? Okay, I'm gonna change the question.
Okay.
What are you learning right now? Maybe that's a better question. Because I feel like it's like you can talk about so many things
Yeah.
that you've learned. But what are you learning right now in your current season of worship leading?
Oh, well,
You wanna go
I'll do
first?
twofold.
Okay, go
Because
ahead.
I was gonna
You
say,
can
I think a lot of my, a lot of the moments of that authentic experience with God came from me remembering what He did for me and knowing that He's gonna continue to do that for me. So like when you were saying like this vertical worship and exalting Him are those in those that because when in the suffering I always say like I felt like I got blessed most through the suffering of life because I felt like that's when I was always drawn closer to God. And because, you're like, I can't do this anymore. You're actually at that breaking point. So I kind of remind myself of those, not remind myself, but remember what He did versus like what was actually going on. So I felt like people, or not people, but like when you lead worship, just understanding that there's something just so powerful in just exalting Him alone. So like when you're saying this vertical worship, I totally understood what you're saying. I was like, yes. And that's why when you said when we were talking about such an awesome God, it's just kind of like, because you are mighty, you are all these things, because I've experienced that and I've seen you in that. So when I lead worship, it's this reminder of like who He is and what He does. And like that's what really brings out this like true worship for me.
I think it takes it's also like a certain maturity level in your faith that you have to get to that point to realize like, okay, like the songs about the character of who God is actually healing. Like it's not talking about me and my suffering. And a lot of times when someone's going through something, they want to talk about what they're going through, which is fine. Yeah. But it's like it's a certain like maturity level in your faith to be like, I know what I'm going through. I know the suffering. I also know that saying the name of Jesus and saying the character of who Jesus is going to do the work for me or heal.
Yeah, and that's why those songs are so powerful.
So cool.
Yeah.
So what about you?
So me, I'm a little bit different because I'm not a singer. I'm on the music side. So, but at the same time,
is he a singer? I'm just kidding.
No, she'll tell you real quick. He is not a singer.
You had a mic on those Wednesday services.
I mean,
I was gonna say because I was like, I feel like I remember you like singing something.
Man, you don't have to tell people.
Okay. I was like, what?
Well, listen.
I've been on Jithin for a while now.
Well, listen. Let's.
Now we haven't talked in a long time, but.
But when you have singers like yourself,
okay,
and then like we're coming down here. Anyway, we'll not.
No,
we won't get there.
We were all on the same boat today.
Yeah, but there's different levels.
Okay, relax. He was good. He was really good. I feel like I remember him singing and it being good. But yeah,
you're so nice. I'll make sure that we double that offering in the back. But I think for me in this recent season, being at this new church for about the last, I guess, 2 years now, is just getting a new perspective on things. I'm big into teams and just growing those things as well and growing together as a unit. And I think an important thing about that is knowing your team as well. Just not having like, all right, I'm just only see you Sundays and only learn about you from 9 a.m. to or whatever sound check is, or say 8 a.m. to 11. I'm not going to talk to you the rest of the week. Yeah. I think doing life together has been such an important part for myself and my wife as we're going through this new season. We've been married for a couple of years. I guess this is breaking news because we have an announcement, but we're expecting a baby.
No. You guys are doing this on
this is the official podcast.
The real dog is this baby.
Really, the baby's about to come next. No, just kidding. Not next week. But doing life with people, not having to go through different seasons on our own, and then being able to do that together as a team. I think as we're lifting up in corporate worship as a team, if we're not all synced, sometimes things can get a little tough or a little muddled and things like that. So just making sure there's always a unified spirit on stage has really been a big push that I've been trying to make sure. And part of that is just getting to know each other, understanding, hey, are you going through this? Is your job okay? Is your family okay? Can I pray for you? Can I check in on you? just making sure that it's not just, hey, we do this thing every Sunday and then I don't talk to you the rest of the week. It's kind of awkward,
it's like being
right?
intentional, building family and relationship and friendship with people.
So that's been like a really big push that I've been doing this last year. I want to get to know people in my local church, and I want them to get to know me, and I want to get to know them. I want to learn from their experiences. Yeah. I want to learn from their faith as well, and how God has triumphed in their life. So that can remind me, like when I'm going through a season, hey, I might be going through the season, but I saw this person go through a similar season, and I saw God pull them out.
Yeah.
And so that can be an encouragement to myself as when we go through those things as well.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It's a real gift of yours. Because I've seen like you just kind of like, and I checked on this person, checked on that, and that's a real gift. It is, because it's so easy to be like, oh, I forgot to text them back. Maybe you don't do that.
That is those type of people. I recall those people in my mind too. Yes. Like I have certain people who I know like are good at that. Mm-hmm. They're just really good at building and fostering community, and that has truly changed my life. Like, so thank you. That's really sweet. But thank you for allowing me to ask questions and take over this interview.
Yeah, this is just a bridge to your podcast.
This is a bridge to my podcast. Just kidding.
Just because you got nothing else. Just because, if you're not busy enough already, listen.
It might come, guys. It might come.
If you need help, I got, I know a guy.
There we go.
I'll rent it for you for real treat. Anyway. Let's cut this episode off. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. It's been a dope season. Yeah. Season 1 so far. We're looking forward to what season 2 has in store. And hopefully we'll talk to you guys soon.
Okay.